There we go. What's up, horror fans? This is Pete from the Lassercast, and I'm with my friend who's rocking a retro T-shirt back to our days of high school. He's got an Offspring shirt, Mr. Dr. Zayas. What the hell, Dr. Zayas God? There we go. By the way,
I've come out to play today.
Nice, and I've got low self-esteem, so we're perfect. What I was gonna say was, Danny, you and I, we talk in person when we go to do these recordings, and sometimes we message each other on Twitter. But I didn't even ask you about that Planet of the Apes trailer that just dropped. What'd you think?
I thought it looks amazing. I've been such a fan of this series. The first one, Rise, I still think is probably the best thing James Franco has ever done, aside from the Room movie. And that was my favorite movie of whatever year it came out. God, it's got to be like early 2010s now.
At least, yeah.
I think I liked War maybe the best, but I do think Rise is still awesome. I think they're all great. Like, I think it's when people kind of segueing into what we're going to talk about today, I think it's an unheralded, when people bring up like these great series, these great franchises, for some reason, maybe it's because they're very modern, nobody brings up the Planet of the Apes movies that have come out in the last decade plus, and now there's going to be a fourth one, which segues to, Hell House LLC, because this is a horror franchise that not too many people mention as great franchises, but now, as we'll see in a second, we're going to be talking about their fourth movie that just released.
Yeah.
And I happen to think they're 4 for 4. I think they've made 4 really scary, really good found footage movies. And I think they figured out a way to reinvent the wheel with this last movie, The Carmichael Manor.
Yeah, a really excellent segue, man. And I think you're right. When you watch the first 3, because I watched them all within like the past week, you start to see patterns. You're like, okay, this is going to happen. And so, spoilers first off for this movie, for the whole franchise. But like, you see the same thing where they're like, okay, they start off, they say, oh, we don't know what happened there. You always have like a documentary about what happened. And it's always that someone went in initially, then someone else goes in to investigate what happened. And then everyone gets missing. Then there's usually like one survivor. It's usually a woman. And then you think that she's okay and that she's safe. And then it's like, nope, she, has been killed too. Or she's, become evil because of the house. And she wants to bring someone back. And it has a pattern. And then all of a sudden for this one, they kind of switch it up and they tell you how certain parts of the house came, or parts of the hotel came to be.
Yeah.
So I was going to ask you, though, like watching this franchise in general, does that bother you that it sort of has this formula, or do you appreciate that?
I actually feel like watching the fourth one when I saw it, Hell House LLC Origins, The Carmichael Manor.
Yeah.
I saw it at IFC Center. It was a packed house. The director and almost the entire cast and crew were there. And to sit there and hear the reactions, like people screaming in the movies, people like the girl next to me, like leaping like into her boyfriend's arms at one point and like going, oh, fuck. Oh, come on. Like, oh, come on. And like, I feel like if I can't criticize something that works, that's why the cliche of if it ain't broke, don't fix it exists. Yeah. And I think that Stephen Cognetti has really tapped into something with these movies where the first 3 all taking place at the Abaddon.
Right.
I do think he needed some kind of a change.
Yes.
I think even though I did like parts 2 and 3, I did feel that they were maybe starting to, bang the same drums.
Yes.
Whereas in this movie, you take those, the haunted house aspect, the haunted attraction aspect of it, the found footage aspect of it, the friggin' clowns, that idea that we talked about last time of like putting the scary thing right in front of you and just leaving it there and it just being a constant presence where you can't escape it because it's always right there
Yeah.
is such an interesting thing. And yeah, I kind of feel like if he released a different Hell House every year or every 2 years for the next decade, and they followed this similar pattern, I think we'd be having the same conversation of like, do you think it's too much? And we'd be like, well, it probably is, but that last movie was fucking scary, so I guess not.
Right, right. No, that's a good point. It's funny because I kind of actually do like the repetitive nature of it. I kind of do like that. It's like, oh, I know what's going to happen here. This is going to happen. They're going to go by the clown, and then all of a sudden the clown's going to move a little bit. Like it's like, you know, I feel like people, especially in our modern audiences and the way people like put stuff on Twitter and they make these YouTube videos, they're always like, oh, this is so, we know what's going to happen. This is so cliche. And you know, kind of takes the joy out of things. But, you know, we grew up in a time where there were so many horror franchises that had movies that like numbered in the 6s, 7s, 8s, 9s, 10s, right? And you see the pattern. I feel like this happens with the Saw movies too, where it's like, you know exactly what's going to happen. They're going to discover some crime scene where people have been murdered, and then like you kind of go throughout the thing and you see how all the people are connected. I think that
I think you made a good I think you made a good segue there to with the Saw franchise, because Saw 10 came out this year,
yeah.
and I think why and it got great reviews. And I think
Mhm.
the reason it got great reviews is because I think the Saw franchise had been looking for ways to kind of deviate from the formula.
Mhm.
The last movie that came out was Spiral from the Book of Saw. It was kind of a spin-off that didn't really work. The movie before that was Jigsaw, and it tried to tell a different version of the story. Like, and again, I don't think it's really a loved film in the franchise. So this one was like, okay, we're gonna go back and effectively make a Saw Part 1.5,
Yeah.
and we're gonna stick this in the timeline way back at the beginning, and we're gonna make an old-fashioned Saw movie. And shockingly, quote unquote, everybody loved it. And I think that, you know, to what you were saying, like there are franchises, and the I think what happens is you get to a point where you say to yourself, we can't just keep making the same movie.
Yeah.
But the reaction to that is to very often go off in an absolutely bizarre direction where Jason goes from being the mutated son of a murdered killer to, you know, being resurrected as a zombie, to being
Right.
launched into space. Freddy goes from being a dream demon to a dream comedian who happens to kill you. Michael Myers, we're bringing in cults, and we're trying to explain his origins. Or even in David Gordon Green's films, where we're trying to, push the Myers curse onto Corey Cunningham.
Right.
I think horror franchises are in a weird place where you get to that point where, do we just keep doing what the audience is used to, or do we try to change it up in a drastic way? And I think they kind of found a middle area with Hell House 4 of, we're going to keep giving the audience the scares that they like and doing the things that made this franchise great, but we're going to change the location. We're going to give you a new, very compelling background story to kind of fall into with some new lore that gets added. Then we're going to add some lore that goes back to the Abaddon. So it's like, it does feel separated from those first three films, but then it kind of connects back to those first three films.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's, you know, I feel like we've talked about it. And I know Chris and I talked about it when I saw Chris last weekend.
Yeah.
You know, we like parts 2 and 3, but I think this movie, part 4, is easily our either second favorite, or maybe in time may become our first favorite of the franchise. For me, it's part 4 is if I'm ranking them, I would put 1 and 4 as my first two.
That's interesting. Okay. Ah, wow. I wonder which one I would say is the scariest. I think the first one is the scariest out of all four. And then for some reason, I like when the franchises get so convoluted and they're so like in their own mythology and weird. And it's usually the movie that people dislike the most when they've made so many and the it's just gotten so like into itself or so up its own ass, right? And that's what I feel like the third one is, where it's all of a sudden it's like, oh well, there's this billionaire guy who died, but then I guess maybe he's possessed by an angel, or he literally is an angel and he's coming back to set things right with the house. And then there's this weird kind of like post-credit scene where like these people that died in the first movie are in the hotel, and somehow it's filmed, like they're in the afterlife, but it's filmed, like found footage. I don't know. I kind of love that shit. It's funny because the first three, not this last one, but the first three are all based around haunts, right? The idea of like this was a haunt at one point and people went to it, and it's set up to where what's going to happen on the haunt, and it's like, okay, there's the clowns and we know what the clowns are going to do. When you go on a haunt, especially if it's a haunt that you've gone to as a tradition for years, you kind of know like, oh, they're making us look over here, so that means that something's going to be in this corner back here and it's going to jump out at us. And I feel like that's what the first three movies feel like. This one feels like it too, but it feels a lot more like this own kind of genre, which I think that Batman began, which is like, oh, we have to explain how we get all these different aspects of this franchise. Like there's a lot of movies that took the Batman Begins approach, like even fucking like the most recent Pirates of the Caribbean. It's like, how did Jack Sparrow get his little gold coin in his hair? Oh, because of this, right?
I'm going to say one word to you. Solo.
Thank you. Yes.
Because the real thing Star Wars fans cared about since 1977 was the dangling cubes from the Millennium Falcon.
Yes.
I spent most of my childhood crying about where Han Solo got those. No, I think you're on the right path here. I think you really like hit it on the head, where like we get this explanation of, okay, we've had a movie or we have a character, and now we need to go into, they're doing it right now. The big release this weekend is The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes, which is the Hunger Games prequel.
Hunger Games, yeah.
And I have friends who are huge Hunger Games fans, and they are very excited. Oh, there's a little light. They're very excited about this movie, and I couldn't care less. And it's not because I loved the Hunger Games books, especially the first two. And I loved the first three movies because they split the third one into two pieces. I really liked the first two movies, and I just couldn't care less about this new movie because I don't need the background. Like right. Sometimes that's what like helps our brain work, is we like to, think about how it got to there. But again, I don't think, I think that this movie, the one we're talking about, I think it does it in a way where it's effective, because you have, again, you're introducing this separated story with separate lore that only a little bit plays into the Abaddon haunt and the Abaddon Hotel. And I think that the two main characters in this, the actresses, I think are really, really good. Bridget Rose Peretta, Destiny Lilani Brown, really, really good as this podcaster and her girlfriend who
agreed.
Who are, they're there for the weekend. I love how the director establishes right from the beginning how fucking out there this place is, and how like there's like one dirt road that you have to turn down, and then you have to go down like miles on that dirt road to get to this massive house. And it's a creepy old house in the middle of the woods. It's basically Evil Dead in a mansion, and I think it capitalizes on that setting so well that when you get those connections back to the Abaddon and to the original trilogy, I don't think it comes off as like as fan service. I think it comes off as like oh shit, I like and the clowns again. It comes back to the clowns because they're in the house, and you're like, what the fuck? And there's also obviously they're there for this murder. This family that had lived in the Carmichael Manor.
Yeah,
they were tragedy and murder and all sorts of terrible things, so they're there for this kind of true crime podcast element.
Yes. Okay, so you bring up something I kind of wanted to talk to you about because I was a little bit confused. Like, I mean, full transparency, I kind of should have sat down and like taken extensive notes on these, maybe like read a couple of articles just so I could get the facts straight. But I was a little bit confused with this movie and this franchise in general. I thought from watching the first movie like last week that those clowns were brought to the Abaddon Hotel by the original people from the Hell House franchise. Like they wanted to make the Abaddon Hotel scary, so they brought these clown mannequins there, and then like, oh, the head doesn't move on this one mannequin, right? Then by the time you get to this movie, it's implied that this young boy, he's like a man or whatever, like this young man that is in this family, in the Carmichael family, he was involved in this like cult, and the cult are the ones that had the clown mannequins, like because people in the cult wore those costumes. Is that what you got from it too, or?
I think that's what they set up, especially at the very end of this. That there were these like carnival people who were murderers and in some type of a cult who wore these clown costumes at the carnival, and that the son of the Carmichael family, he was involved in that he worked for them. And that's where the clown mannequins are like, imbued with the powers of these serial killing carnies. And you kind of find out at the end that he was like one of them. Okay. So yeah, I mean, maybe somehow they, as a prequel, maybe somehow they ended up just somewhere where the crew of the first movie could like find them and put them in the basement.
Yeah. And it's like full circle. Yeah. Well, because there are items that like are outside of the house, then they kind of make their way back to the house. Like there's a part in this movie where they're in this like kind of pawn shop in the town, and they find this clock, and there's a hidden compartment in the clock, and the clock has that Ouija board that's been in all the other movies, that weird looking Ouija, or that like Ouija piece, or planchette.
The
planchette. Yeah. So I mean, there's obviously different like little things, like little Easter eggs that are in each movie, and sometimes they have significance, sometimes they don't. There's one sequence I really wanted to talk to you about. We need to talk about the clowns more, but just in talking, I was like, oh yeah, I really like this one scene. This is different from all the other movies. There's a scene where the girlfriend is talking to a realtor, or she's talking to a client because she's a realtor, and she's showing her pictures of houses.
This is easily the best scene in the movie.
Yes. Okay. And it's cool because in the third movie, well, actually, I think in all three of the first movies, they have these people that are in cloaks. And in the third movie, there's this big slaughter where these people in cloaks are kind of like demons, and they're just like attacking people throughout the haunt. You see them in these frames too. They're like in a field walking. So I just like how it starts out like regular pictures of houses, and then all of a sudden you get more and more Carmichael / Abaddon stuff. You like that scene a lot too?
Is this also the scene where she's talking to the realtor, and the shot of the pictures from inside the house that she's showing are pictures that are taken of her from behind?
Yep.
So it's as if somebody is standing behind her with a camera, and the woman on the line with her is like, "Oh, is that the room that you're in?" And she's like, "Wait, what?" And it keeps flashing, and the camera keeps getting closer to her, and then there's this amazing like jump scare.
Yep.
That scene best reactions of any scene in the movie in the theater were that scene. I thought, and again, and I think that plays into the whole, when you're doing a found footage movie or when you're doing this style of movie, you have to like come up with tricks to get the camera where you want. And the fact that she is, you know, a realtor, that she's like trying to work from the house while her girlfriend is doing the podcast, and she's, she's also the one who's like, we need to get the fuck out of here. And they come up with like, oh, the car isn't starting. And again, that goes back to them establishing how far away this house is from everything else. So if the car doesn't start, they're kind of screwed. They try walking, that doesn't work. They have to run back to the house.
Right.
Yeah, I got real Evil Dead vibes when they're out in the woods trying to walk like the 2 miles back to the road, and like all this weird shit's happening. I got Blair Witch vibes. I got Evil Dead vibes.
Yes.
And you know, I just bring it back to something that the director said at IFC when he was doing his Q&A is, you know, sometimes, you know, you need a reason for the camera to be there, and sometimes you just have to ask your characters to be stupid because otherwise the movie doesn't happen. So it's like, you know, after all this shit and the car doesn't start, what would ever get her to go back in the house? And it's like, well, what are you going to do? Are you going to sleep in the car? Are you going to get lost in the woods? Or are you going to hope that you could just survive one more night and then try it again in the morning? You know, the whole red ball, the use of the red ball in this movie, I thought was amazing.
Yes, yes.
Which brought up memories of The Changeling. I don't know if you ever saw The Changeling with George C. Scott.
I have not, but I know they have that scene. It's on the 101 Scariest Horror Movie Moments, and it has that ball.
Yeah. I mean, again, it's just, these are simple things. They're clown mannequins. It's a red ball. It's a car that doesn't start. These are like, you know, you could tell how much the budget gets stretched on these movies because they're getting maximum scares with, I don't want to use the phrase minimum effort, but with like minimum, you know, a red ball, you know, mannequins. They're not doing much to create these great scares, and they manage to get those scares all the time. And, you know, like, it starts with that scene in the bedroom with the girlfriend and, you know, the camera just getting closer. It's, you know, we talked about last time, it's that the slow dread of these movies. Like he basically tells you the house is haunted, the clowns are evil, there's ghosts in the house. You know, there's a couple scenes in these long hallways where you see things creeping around the side, and you know all of this, and it's just, you're stuck there, and a lot of times the things are just slowly moving towards the camera,
right?
And you have nowhere to go, and it's really, it's like the opposite of jump scares, but done in such an effective way. And we brought it up last time. It's When Evil Lurks did this too, where, you know, that scene with the dog is like, the director might as well have been waving a sign that says, you know what's about to happen, but you're gonna have to sit here and take it. And to be able to get scares like that, I think is really it shows a level of knowledge of the genre and talent as a filmmaker to do that.
Right. I totally agree. And I think that like it's interesting because I always am interested in like storytelling and what makes people make certain decisions when they're putting together their movie or their novel or whatever. And I wondered if initially when they first made the first movie, if like the clowns were just like, oh, look at these creepy clowns. Like sometimes you hear things where like, you know, like George Lucas with like this first Star Wars movie. This is our second Star Wars reference in a video too. It's weird. But like, you know, the cantina scene, for instance, the creatures in the original cantina look weird because basically a lot of them are Halloween masks that they just found in the store. They didn't have money. And so they just, you know, found these Halloween masks. I wondered if when they were making the first movie, they didn't think this whole thing where like the clowns are going to be part of this lore or anything like that. Maybe someone just saw these creepy ass clown mannequins somewhere, and they're like, "Oh, this would be great for the movie," or "Oh, we need something creepy. Clowns are creepy. Let's use these." There's something like just super inherently unsettling and scary about that main clown they always show, that kind of bigger one that's in all these thumbnails I've made for these videos. Just looking at that puts you on edge and creeps you out. And they've used it in every single movie. In this one, it actually like legitimately moves, and you see like its limbs move and it's walking towards the camera. That's the first time in this one. And then I really love that scene with the realtor and the girlfriend. Another scene I thought that was very effective was just like the brother by himself. Like you talked about things poking around the corner. There's one part where like the ghost of the sister, at first you see her hand on the wall.
Yeah.
Like that's creepy. Then she's like poking her head with the mask on around the corner. That's extra creepy too. Then you have this sequence where he's in the bedroom by himself and you know that he goes missing. You hear knocks on the door at first. Then you see the fucking clown in his room and you're like, oh God. And his reaction is really great too. He's like, I'm sorry. He's like so scared. And he's kind of talking the way I feel like I would talk or anyone would talk if they were in that scenario. Like, I'm sorry. Like you're just basically powerless. You're saying like, okay, I'll do anything. I'm just leaving. I'm leaving. We're sorry. And that sequence I thought was very scary. I thought if I saw that in the theater, I'd be freaking out.
I and the inclusion of the brother character also made me think of Blair Witch, because Blair Witch is 3 people versus like demonic forces in the woods.
Yeah.
And you basically have, these 2 female characters and the brother, and it's like the 3 of them locked in this mansion against some type of unspoken evil. I like that the lore behind like the whole Carmichael affair is never really fully explained. Like they kind of set up the father, and then they never really paid that off. So I don't know if like we're just supposed to, like, I almost don't know if that is a continuity error or if that was just done intentionally to like throw us off as viewers as like, oh, it probably was the father. But then, oh, it turns out, spoiler alert, that the brother of this family was in with these cult carnival workers who dressed as clowns. And that, he's the reason why the clowns are there, and he's the reason why things are going the way they are.
Right.
So I liked the exploration of the family. I thought the geography of the house was set up really well.
Mm-hmm.
It's just, it really doesn't take much to make a good horror movie. Knocks on the walls, red balls bouncing around, and some creepy ass mannequins, and you end up with like what is, again, I think this movie was 95 minutes, 97 minutes. You could watch this whole franchise in the time it takes you to watch one of the Lord of the Rings special editions. So
yeah, that's a good point. That's interesting. Yeah. I dug it, and it's so cool because it's all available on Shudder. You can watch all 4 on Shudder, and has Stephen Cognetti made anything besides this franchise?
I'm not sure, but I know that so the reason this movie came to be was because he was going to do I think like a kind of like a TV series kind of spin-off of this, I think called the Abaddon Tapes.
Oh, okay.
And that was in development. Like I interviewed him years back for Geeks of Doom.
Yeah.
And I think it was when part 3 was coming out.
Okay.
And he had mentioned that like that was his next project, was like he was going to do this like Abaddon Tapes thing. And it just, I think it like dragged through developmental hell for like a few years, and it never really got off the ground. And of course the pandemic happened. And I think that basically this was like a backup plan of like, all right, we don't want to go back to Abaddon, but why don't we just do another like kind of movie in this universe? And and if this movie is a backup plan, then man, I'd love to see a 5th movie where it is the plan, because Uh, like I said, this is probably upon first watch my second favorite in the franchise. I haven't rewatched parts 2 and 3 in the last week. I know you just knocked out the whole franchise, but they also just posted on Facebook that these movies are Shudder exclusives, but they will be coming to VOD, and they're going to be releasing on VOD for either purchase or for rent, coming very soon. I think, like, to all the usual places, Prime, Vudu, etc. But yeah, I mean, this is one of the cool things about Shudder is they get these like exclusive movies. They always. I saw this as part of the Shudder showcase that IFC Center does every month. I've been to, I think, 3 of those now, and they've been a lot of fun. I took Charlotte to see It's a Wonderful Knife.
Nice.
I'm going to the December one, which is The Sacrifice Game, which is directed by Jen Wexler, who did The Ranger. I have a short review of that because I saw that when it closed out the Brooklyn Horror Film Festival
Very cool.
a few weeks ago. So I'm going back
Nice.
to see it again, and there's going to be a Q&A after the movie. So I'm really looking forward to that.
That's fucking awesome, man. Yeah. I'm really glad that you got me into this series, that we watched it. And it just, I always love to get some use out of my Shudder account. I really dug this series. I'm not sure how I would rank all of them, but I know that, like, just being in my creepy base garage that I'm in right now, I'm just picturing a clown kind of standing in the corner, I'm a little traumatized by it. So, Thanksgiving is upon us. We are up to the week of Thanksgiving. And I just wanted to say to the guys that are watching, for those of you that like consistently watch our videos and, you've subscribed to our channel and you give us likes or you leave comments, I'm very thankful for you because, Danny and I make this stuff every single week. And it's nice to know that there's somebody out there watching it. So thank you so much. We appreciate you. Danny, you were saying that you were kind of busy this week, but like, what do you got coming up on the channel?
Well, speaking of Thanksgiving, my friend and I will be seeing that on Wednesday, right before Thanksgiving. So you can expect a short review of that. I've seen a lot of reviews already that call it. I've seen everything from it is all of the positives and negatives of 80s slashers rolled into one movie, which, okay, fine. I've also seen that it is like an amazing modern slasher, which, great. I trust Eli Roth when it comes to gore. So I am really looking forward to that. I've been thinking about this movie since I saw Grindhouse about 15 years ago.
Right.
So that I will definitely have a review of. I have a bunch of movies saved in my Vudu account. I'm trying to, as is what we do at this time of year, I'm trying to dig through the 2023 catalog and find the movies that I missed or haven't seen. So I already rented Beau is Afraid by Ari Aster. I already rented The Passenger with Kyle Gallner, which I heard is amazing. I have a few horror movies that I have rented that I have to watch. On Tuesday night, I'm going to see a movie. I don't know if anybody's heard of this one. It's called The Texas Chainsaw Massacre at Alamo Drafthouse. So I will do a review of that movie. It's a small movie. I don't know if anybody's ever heard of it.
I think it's funny the way that you said that, because you said it's called The Texas Chainsaw Massacre at Alamo Drafthouse. I got a little freaked out since I live in Texas. Yeah.
And so, yeah, I'll do a short review of that. I think that's a perfect movie for Thanksgiving because the movie ends with a nice family meal. And, that's really what Thanksgiving's all about.
Wow.
But yeah, we will. So we have some stuff coming up in the pipeline, and I'm sure we'll try to find some more holiday horror to talk about as we get closer past Thanksgiving and into December.
Good point.
So yeah, I'm just looking, like you said, I'm very thankful to everybody and anybody who pays us any attention, and takes our opinions and does and just listens to them. It means a lot.
Yeah, thank y'all. So you guys enjoy your Thanksgiving, and Danny and I will be back.